Welcome back, sports gamers. It's The Natural. Joining me today is Brian Hayes, creative director of EA Sports UFC, here to talk UFC 3, what new features can we expect, and to discuss UFC 3's biggest improvement this year, the GOAT career mode. Thanks for taking the time out to speak with me today, Brian.
Hey, thank you very much for having me.
So the career mode is huge. You guys are totally fleshing it out. A lot of new things, a lot of excitement around career mode. Can you talk a little bit about a lot of the new features or things being added to career mode and how you kind of fit into that as your role at EA?
Sure, I would love to. I'm the creative director on the EA Sports UFC franchise, so I basically work collaboratively with all the other designers and producers and basically everybody on the game across all the features, all the modes, etc. But career mode was a very, very big focus for us this year, because on UFC 2 we looked at the in-game telemetry, we saw that it was one of the most popular modes. People said it's one of the modes I like to play the most, but it was also one of the modes coming off of UFC 2 that even though we did a lot of work on that game for it, people still weren't super satisfied. So we really wanted to, I wouldn't even say double down, more so triple down on it this year and add a lot more depth and variety to it. So in terms of the new things that we brought to career mode this year, man, it's a long list. One of the big things we knew was missing, or we felt it was missing from the career mode experience previously, was the real sense of an end goal or a finish line or something to let you know when you sort of quote unquote beat the game. So that's why we were sort of calling it the greatest of all time, or the GOAT career mode this year. So we set up a system where there are distinct objectives for you to accomplish over the course of your career that will determine whether or not you become the GOAT. And there are both performance records that are things you can accomplish inside the octagon, and they're all based off of real-world UFC records. And there are promotional records that you accomplish by promoting your fights and trying to increase your popularity in between fights. And if you accomplish some of those, the combination of those two things is what will make you become the GOAT in EA Sports UFC 3. Then we also added the concept of UFC contracts and fight purses and win bonuses, etc. So your performance inside the octagon will determine the quality of your next UFC contract, how much money you'll earn. You can use that money to unlock new gyms. There are 9 different fictional gyms in the game this year, each with its own roster of UFC fighters that you can train against to unlock new moves and new perks. That's something that we didn't have last year. And the training camp system for every single preparation for every single fight has an entire new core loop where you do different things to either increase your fighter's attributes, as I said, train against the roster of your sort of teammates at your current gym to unlock a new move or a higher level move or perk. You can also then do promotional activities to increase your popularity or drive up the fight hype. And there's also a sparring option, which allows you to spend a minute sparring against a generic training partner, but we give that training partner the AI and the attributes of your upcoming opponent. And then after that 1 minute sparring session, we give you a key to victory. So we've done a lot of work adding the GOAT objectives, the contracts, the career cash, and a whole new social media system, new cinematics. There's a ton of stuff in there. I can go on and on, but I have a feeling you don't have all day.
No, that's fine. Thank you for being so detailed. And the social media aspect was one thing I thought that was really cool you're adding, where you can actually engage in social media and that can raise or lower your fighter's popularity as well.
Yeah, you can. A couple different things happen with the social media system. You'll always see feedback from the simulated world of the UFC, from fans, from other UFC personalities commenting on your achievements or your trials during your UFC career. And it's pretty interesting how impactful it can be. Generally, when I played a lot of career modes, during the course of development here, and it's a really weird thing how the positive comments will kind of wash over me. People can be hyping me up a whole lot over the course of my simulated career. But then once I get one hater that comes up and says about me during the course of my EA Sports UFC career. But in the game mode, it definitely works. So there's just the interaction that you get, or the feedback that you get from the fans and other UFC personalities. But then there's also the ability to, rivals over the course of your career will send you messages that you can choose a response to. And then those responses will have different impacts on your popularity as well. They will also increase the hype for your upcoming fight against that rival. And another really nice wrinkle is the more you do to promote each fight and drive up the hype for any upcoming fight, that also has an impact on the difficulty of that fight. So there's a risk and reward of, you want to drive up your fight hype and increase your popularity because you want to be able to accomplish those promotional objectives to become the greatest of all time. But every time you hype a fight up to a really high level, that fight's going to be harder than fights that were only, say, medium or low hype. So there's a really nice feedback loop there going on.
Wow, that's interesting. I don't think that little tidbit right there has been released, has it?
Yeah, well, and that really comes down to there's so much for me to talk about the career mode every single time. I'm guaranteed to forget at least one little wrinkle, but that's definitely a really nice one that's cool. That shouldn't be overlooked.
What things have you guys done to the mode this year won't be as repetitive as last year's career mode?
There's a lot of things that factor into that. One thing for sure is we spend a lot of time refining our CPU AI. So with the implementation of the new stand-up sort of gameplay systems, the striking, there's a lot more variability to the striking strategy in our game. And we also just sort of refined and developed the difference between all the different fighter archetypes. So when you're fighting somebody like, Khabib, especially on one of the higher difficulty settings, you can expect it to be a bad time if he takes you down to the ground. Whereas if you're fighting something like Edson Barboza, that's a really dynamic striker, you can expect to be, eating leg kicks or having to watch out for some devastating spin kicks to the head and that kind of stuff. So there's definite variability there. There's also, because of the social media system and because of the fact that you're going to be trying to take down long-term career objectives to become the GOAT, or you also have sort of medium-term contract goals that based on whatever your current status is with the UFC and what contract you have, there's some things that they want you to accomplish there as well. So there's the short-term goals of just trying to get the win against a different type of AI. There's the long-term goals of are you trying to break the record for most submissions or most KO finishes in the UFC as one of your GOAT performance objectives. And then there's short-term contract goals. There's also via the social media system, sometimes when you get deep in your skill, you have the opportunity to make a prediction for your upcoming fight. So if you predicted that you're going to finish your opponent with a first-round knockout, that's going to impact your strategy as opposed to if you said that, you tried to give yourself some time and said you're going to finish them by third-round submission. So there's things that are under your control that sort of put different objectives in front of you for every single fight. There's things that are long-term objectives, like I said, for becoming the GOAT, short-term objectives for impressing the UFC on your current contract. And then there's, what are the fans thinking and what, and all that kind of stuff. So different things all factor into making, the variability from one fight to the next, very, very different.
With the advent of long shot and story modes in sports games being huge now and very popular, is the career mode, does it have any storylines or is just strictly focused what's in the ring and some of the social stuff? Is there any storylines that take place kind of behind the scenes in addition to that?
There's not in the sense that I would compare to a mode like FIFA's The Journey or Madden's Long Shot. We do try and bring some elements of narrative to the career mode experience. Primarily, I would say through the rivalry system, which is every time you sign a new contract, a different UFC fighter, depending on which weight division you're competing at, is going to come out and basically start talking smack with you. And then you have that little relationship over the course of that current contract up until when you fight that rival where you can choose how to respond to them. They will say different things to you. So there's a little bit of back and forth. It's not necessarily like you're not going to see cinematics where you bump into that person in a restaurant and you get into a scuffle, that kind of thing.
That sounds awesome.
But you have the ability to do some back and forth. There are new cinematics in the career mode experience. Some of them are based off of the UFC Minute, and those feature Megan O'Leary. And then there's some of them based off of the UFC Bad Blood sort of promotional series. And that's where you'll see your fighter in cinematics, like at the, a promotional workout or the weigh-ins or press conferences, and see your fighter in those situations outside of the octagon. But it's not as much of a scripted, narrative with voiceover and that kind of stuff. But we do try and make it a story that you are creating for yourself, and we support that with cinematics and back and forth interaction with fighters and rivals.
So in that same vein, will you be kind of forced to win, or like how will your career path change with losses? Can you be cut from the UFC if the losses pile up?
Yeah, that's definitely possible. Another wrinkle that we added this year is you actually don't start career mode in UFC 3 in the UFC. We resurrected the World Fighting Alliance as a minor league, and that's where you begin your MMA career. And based on your performance there in the minor league, that determines how quickly you're called up to the UFC, whether you get called up straight away, whether they invite you to the season of the Ultimate Fighter. If you don't do well enough on the Ultimate Fighter, if that's your path, then you would get sent back down to the WFA and have to get a few more wins there. Once you're into the UFC, you're pretty much in there, and you need to perform to a high enough level. Otherwise, they're going to send you packing, and there's really no opportunity to come back. So, yeah, if the losses pile up, really what that's going to do is impact your upcoming, any future contract that they offer you. And if you're taking losses, you're also probably taking a beating, which means that your sort of career health, which we call your longevity, will drain much faster. So longevity is kind of like the hourglass on your overall career. Once your longevity is tapped out, that's when the UFC is going to say, like, you get one more fight, and we're not going to actually look to sign you to another contract. So that factors into a bunch of things. Again, one of the objectives for you to become the greatest of all time would be to break the record for most performance of the night or fight of the night bonuses. One of the ways that you have a fight of the night, obviously, is to have, a super exciting, violent affair a la Eddie Alvarez and Justin Gaethje. Mm-hmm. But if you engage in those affairs all the time, your longevity is going to chip away much faster than if you fight strategically and take very little damage. So there's always these trade-offs that you have to balance depending on what objectives you're trying to accomplish long-term in your career.
Wow, that's definitely something you have to think about during the whole time, and even how you fight, how you plan your fights and everything. So how many fights would you say you had before you retired? I mean, on the low end and the high end, 50 fights, and maybe if you fight aggressively, 20?
That's a tough one to say. I don't know that I have specific data on that, but I think, if you did if you just ate punches almost willfully, yeah, you might be looking around maybe the 20 fight sort of limit. If you had a relatively moderate damage career, I think you're looking more around the 35, 40 fights, 45 fights. But we definitely know that I think it can go. A career could go as long as over 55, 60 fights.
Oh wow! Oh, that's a huge range.
Yeah, it's all up to you.
Hopefully, you guys enjoyed that. Make sure you stay tuned for part 2 coming as he goes into more depth and some new features and some unannounced things from UFC 3's career mode. Next time, drop a like and subscribe for more UFC 3 and tips, gameplay, and news from your favorite sports games. This is the Natural at SportsGamersOnline.com. I'm out.